What's up, guys? We're going to talk about all the ways to cheat your push-ups today. Push-ups essentially have two primary things to consider. What are those things, Andrew?
Midline and your range of motion.
So range of motion being, what am I trying to accomplish?
Chest to the ground.
And then
all the way up to a locked out elbow, terminal extension.
Cool. And then what am I looking for in my midline?
Your 2x4 moving as one unit.
Should I be like this?
Not breaking up the hips.
Should I be like this?
No, so straight line from your heels all the way up to your shoulders throughout the entire push-up.
So we're going to talk about all the different ways you can cheat your push-ups. It's a relatively straightforward movement, but they are difficult by way of strength. So we're going to talk about how that looks. I know what you're thinking. Push-ups are hard. You're doing the best you can, but these are the key ways to actually get stronger, because we don't want to see people struggle through the same patterns of movements. We want to see you get past them, get stronger, and move on to perfectly crisp, awesome push-ups.
That's how they're going to be the most productive and have the most crossover to other things. If I'm not locking on my elbows and my push-ups, then I'm just setting myself up for bad habits on my push presses, my jerks, and all that stuff, where terminal extension becomes very, very important.
Yeah, ultimately, if this is my pushing range of motion and I never go to here, there should be almost no expectation that I would actually get stronger there. So you got to get in there to make sure that that actually gets stronger. All right, so here's all our reasons, or here's all of our ways to cheat them.
Skipping the movement.
So first one is going to be essentially no range of motion going downwards. So what would this look like, Andrew?
So breaking the elbows, but just to some random distance, as opposed to marking your push-up with your chest to the ground. So whether your chest drops 2 inches or 5 inches, typically push-ups can be maybe like 12 to 16 inches based on your arm length.
Next one's going to be no range on the way up. So going all the way down but not reaching full lockout. You know, this is pretty straightforward. The weird thing is usually if people do this, they have the strength, they're just not committing to the full range of motion.
Yeah.
And honestly, because it's a little bit harder. So don't cheat that end range of motion either.
And also, don't ever let the clock, just because you're doing in a CrossFit class, don't let the clock determine your push-ups because you're trying to do them so fast. They should be a movement that the range of motion dictates really how fast you can go. If you cut the range and you can do 100 push-ups in 30 seconds, then obviously there's something wrong.
Yeah, anyone who's ever said, when I ask somebody like, hey, what do you think you have for maxed out push-ups? And somebody says 70, I'm like, okay, you're not doing the full range of motion, like 100%.
Yeah. So the next way of kind of skimping on the push-up is kind of tricking yourself into thinking that you have the full range of motion by moving your head and in turn moving your eyes up and down, but not actually going through the range of motion in your shoulders and your elbows. So it's kind of like a mind trick, and then you think, oh man, I'm getting like 8 inches range of motion out of this, but really the only thing moving is your neck and vertebral protraction and retraction, or cervical protraction and retraction.
Essentially amounts to a head-only push-up, which is then followed up by a hip-only push-up, where you basically just kind of sink your hips to basically touch maybe your pelvis or your stomach to the ground. Cool, I got it all the way down. And then you come back up, but you're not actually doing anything by way of the shoulders. You're just kind of breaking at the hip in order to go down and then back up.
And to be clear with the head position, your head shouldn't move at all during your push-up. I mean, just like when we're squatting and stuff, and when we're trying to keep a neutral head position on our deadlifts and our squats, same thing goes for the push-up. I shouldn't be tossing my head all over the place. Next one is snaking push-ups. So maybe going down, all the way down, actually maybe controlling the eccentric phase, lowering really well, but then moving up in a broken pattern, which maybe your chest leaves the ground first, then followed by like the bottom of your sternum, and then your belly, and then your hips, and then your knees. So it could be good range of motion on the way down, and maybe reaching full range of motion at the top, but the way you're going through that range of motion is too broken. You're not moving as one unit.
Next one is a generally soft push-up. So this one's a little more subtle, but ultimately if we were doing these crisp and perfect, not on like a bench press, we don't want to be soft with our bench press and just kind of only moving our chest. We want everything to be nice and tight. Same thing with a push-up. We want the hips tight, the butt tight, the midline tight, shoulders engaged, everything tight, as opposed to going through the range of motion, but kind of generally soft and crumpled.
Next one would be piking your hips up in the air. So basically, again, broken position, but there's flexion across the hip. So your hips are way up in the air, but your shoulders and ankles are in line. So basically, shoulders are good, ankles are good, but you have the butt sticking really high in the air, kind of like a pyramid. And you're that's typically going to also result in a skewed range of motion. But that can skew kind of the pressing pattern of a push-up.
It also takes your midline out of the equation. You're not really doing anything with your abs at that point. So it's not like the push-up becomes easier necessarily, it just becomes kind of wonky and a non-push-up at that point. So next one is just generally, and this can come by any way that you can imagine it is poor hand placement. So this might come by way of putting your hands out too far in front of you and sort of getting this skewed range of motion where your shoulders are going out to a weird place, or it might become by way of your hands going way too wide, so it becomes very difficult to actually get a full range of motion. And it feels like, because you don't have much going on here, it feels like you're going to full depth. It becomes very difficult to actually touch your chest and actually get full lockout. So Andrew, what is the way to solve for all of these push-ups?
Modify accordingly based on your strength level, your fatigue level, your range of motion, your shoulders and your elbows. Modify the same reasons you would modify any other lift if you can't maintain range of motion throughout that lift with good body positions.
So think of it like this. If the WOD calls, for instance, a 400-pound deadlift and your max is 300, you wouldn't put 400 on the bar and only do a deadlift from the top down to your knees. That would be obviously ridiculous, right? You would scale back to 200, something that you could do, and you could go through the full range of motion, because theoretically going through that full range of motion is what gets you stronger. Same thing with push-ups, but there's a tendency to just like, okay, cool, I got it, and the range of motion gets a little less over time. The midline breaks, you just kind of suffer through it, and then lo and behold, okay, you're done, but you didn't get any stronger. Won't you get stronger?
Strength is range of motion specific. If you do not travel through a range of motion, you will not get stronger in that range of motion.
Let us know if you have any questions. Push-ups are a foundational bodyweight movement. We want everyone to kill it, crush it, be good at it. But the only way to get there is to hold yourself accountable with these things, and then ask questions if you're unclear, and let us know if you need some assistance. We're here for you guys. Thanks for watching.